All right, so on 43, we've got a few things here that we're going to translate, and you want to think about, like, there's not just one number that makes this true, but you want to think about if you pick a number that makes the inequality true, does it really make sense? Okay, so in this case, I've got something that says the cost of 5 steaks is at least $30.25. So I've got at least, I know I've got 5 steaks. I would be wanting to, like, X would be my steaks. So my writing that inequality would be 5x. At least, does at least mean it could be more or it could be less? More, yeah. So the least part is that it's pointing at the 30.25. So at least, hello, at least is actually going to show us that it could be more than that. Just like if I told you it's going to take at least 10 minutes, that you probably should figure on 20 because it's going to be a 10 or more. And then when we solve for the variable, we're still dividing, in this case, by 5. So we got here $6.05, I believe. Good morning. Hello there. Oh, oh, that's okay. We're all good. My grandma self will come out and I'll be distracted, but it's all good. So then I would want to say, like, is this a reasonable answer? Does it seem reasonable that the cost of a steak is more than or equal to $6.05? Yeah, a steak, right? Steak is expensive. So the cost of a steak being $6.05 or higher, like if I put $7, that would make it true. So that is reasonable. This is on page 43 here. Okay. All right, so focus question 2 is why we talked about cost and revenue. Remember, that's like our expenses and our sales. And so that's why we talked about that. And so if someone makes a profit, then their revenue would have to be more than their cost, or their cost has to be less than their revenue. Okay? So because if the costs are more than the revenue, you didn't make any money, right? You're still in the hole. You're still losing money. So it may help. This just gives us a little T-chart. I won't usually do that, to be honest. But you're going to find that there's a couple things in here. We are supposed to find the number of T-shirts, and it's going to be difficult for me, but I'm going to use the letter T since it said T. Usually, of course, you know me, I like X. But there's going to be a couple things that's for each T-shirt. So I see here that it cost Shayna $6.50 for each T-shirt. So $6.50 is going to get a T. And that's a cost. So I'm going to put that here. And I'm not always good at, like, following these directions about underlining certain things and etc. So, and then she also has to pay $150 a month to rent equipment. Now we're just doing this for 1 month, for a month. So we don't need to put in a variable with that, but that's another cost that she has. It's just straight up $150. That's not for every T-shirt, right? That'd be crazy. How could you ever make any money? And then we see that she sells the T-shirts for $12. So that's also going to get a T, but that's money she has coming in. So if we add together her two costs, the $6.50 T and the $150, so that's $6.50 for every T-shirt plus $150. That needs to be less than her income, her revenue, her sales. So when you're looking at the cost, there would always, in these problems, there's always going to be two costs. One of them are per item, and they get that one gets a variable, and one of them is just a constant. And then we need to solve. Now, we usually like to see our variable on the left, but there is no constant on the right. So if I'm solving this, I am instead going to subtract my 650t here. So then I would have 150 is less than 550t. Or I could just write 5.5. And then divide by 5.5 or 550. Now, this probably doesn't come out neatly. Let's see, what do I got here? 150 divided by 5.5. So I get 27.2727. Well, so that's 27.27. And that is less than, the t is on the greater side. Now, nobody's buying a decimal part of a t-shirt, right? I mean, I've seen some little crop shirts, and I know that, you know, it only looks like part of a shirt, but you still pay full price for it, right? You don't get it for like a big discount because it's skimpy. Also, we need the number of t-shirts to be more than this number. So even though it's only 0.2, we still need to bump it up to 28 shirts. So they would have to sell 28 t-shirts to make a profit. If they only sold 27 t-shirts, they would still be losing a little bit of money. So they're basically kind of making $5.50 on every t-shirt, but they have to pay the rent. So the first 28 t-shirts is mostly just going to pay the rent. So it wouldn't be till they sold that 28th shirt that they finally would have made just a little bit of money beyond what it takes to pay the bills. Obviously, it's a very simplified application of a small business, but it does kind of show, even in a simple application, why for a small business it can be really tough to make it, because it seems like, oh yeah, I can buy these for this and sell them for this. I'm going to make all kinds of money. But then when you have to start paying for equipment, or you got to start paying for rent to have a spot to sell things, and all those other things come up, then you realize, dang, I'm not charging nearly enough. And then people don't necessarily want to, especially if you've already had low prices, they don't necessarily want to pay a higher price after you've been selling it to them for a lower price. All right, this time we get an average question. So it's been warm here, but not this warm. So high temperatures for the last 2 days were 102 and 105. Yeah, we're like out in Arizona or something. So 102 and 105. And then we are supposed to find what would the high temperature have to be today. So we're going to we don't know that's what we're looking for, the third day. For the average for the 3 days, so remember with the average, we would add them all together. We have to put the x there, divide by 3. And we want that to be no more than 100, which means it has to be less than or equal to 100. So off the top of our heads, we should think, well, if the average now is going to be less than, no more than 100, it better cool off, right? Because we've had 2 temperatures that were over 100. So it's going to have to be lower. So in our minds, we should know it's going to have to be something under 100 to make this true. So then to solve this, we can go ahead and multiply by 3. That'll clean things up. We don't have to drag that fraction around any longer. And then before I even write the next part down, I'll go ahead and add 102 and 105. So I've got 207 plus x. Remember, those don't need to be multiplied by 3. They're just out of the fraction now. And then 100 times 3 is 300. Then to get the x by itself, we'll subtract the 207. So if the average for 3 days is going to be no more than 100, then today's temperature needs to be 93 or less. So something less than 93, like 80, then the average would be less than 100. If it's exactly 93, it's going to be exactly 100. It could be 50. I mean, it would be unlikely that the high temperature would be 50 after being 102 and 105, but that would still make the average no more than 100. So there's a whole range of numbers because it doesn't say the average has to be equal to 100. It says no more than 100. In these couple guided practice problems, the first one about Kings Island, have any of you been to Kings Island? Yeah, got a couple Kings Island, okay. If you've not been to Kings Island, kind of like Cedar Point, Holiday World, you know, amusement park. I grew up in southeastern Indiana, so Indianapolis was about an hour away and Cincinnati was about an hour away. So Kings Island was the go-to summer place as far as amusement parks from where I lived. So if you have to be at least 56 inches, now I would probably have written this with the H first. At least 56 means you got to be taller than or equal to 56. But then if I flip that around so that 56 is first, because that's the way they wrote it, it needs to be pointing at the 56 and open to the H and have the equal sign. So that would be the same as D. So 56 is the shortest you could be. If you're taller than 56, then you'd be able to ride all the rides. And most of you can absolutely not relate to this next problem because it's been a while since there were charges per minute for long distance. I'm going to say long distance. What do you even mean by that?
What do they consider long distance?
Okay, so I don't know, 20 years ago, probably 20 years ago, from a home phone, because cell phones really weren't that much of a thing yet, or they were just getting to be a thing. From your home phone, if you were like within Noblesville, you could call people as much as you wanted. But if you wanted to call someone who was in Muncie, that was long distance. And then you paid by the minute. And calls during the day were more expensive than calls at night. And of course, if you had someone like in California, but it didn't have to be international. It didn't even have to be out of the state. Yeah, so you had a certain area, usually about maybe things within about 25 miles, that wasn't long distance, and then outside of that area, it was long distance. Yeah, so now people don't call on the phone just because they don't like to talk on the phone. But back then, it was like, you know, I called my dad every couple weeks, or maybe he called because, you know, we couldn't just call often because it cost a lot of money. All right, so if I had to pay that way, and I suppose now there might be some things like this that you would pay for international calls or something, but he paid $5 a month. The $5 monthly sounds great though, right? If you could only pay $5 monthly. And then 5 cents a minute. And we're supposed to find out, so 5 cents per minute. So I'd have to give that the decimal. And he doesn't want to spend more than $12 on his long distance charges. So those things would have to stay less than or equal to $12. So that's his budget. Anything that there's kind of a budget where you can't spend more than a certain amount, you're going to stay less than or equal to that number. It's okay if he spends his entire $12, so it does have the equal sign. So we would subtract the 5, because that's what he's paying for the monthly service, or the monthly long distance, I guess. And then when we divide by 5 cents, some of you might be surprised by how large this number is. Keep in mind, it's like you're buying something that's a nickel. If you're buying something that's a nickel, you could buy 20 of them for $1. So then this turns out to be 140, because we're dividing by a decimal, so we do get a smaller. That small number, tiny number we're dividing by, we get a larger number. We're not used to dividing and seeing a larger number. But keep in mind, $7 is like 700 cents. And this each minute only cost 5 cents. All right, so we have some homework problems on the back of page 45. Since they are in kind of a newer concept, I'm going to help go through and get you set up and then just allow you to solve them. So we'll set them up together and then you'll finish them. That's the goal. Okay, so we have another small business person here, Azaya. And Azaya does hair for her friends. And each time she does one of these hairstyles, she's spending $30 in the different supplies that she uses. But now she's decided she's going to open her own store. But she's paying $500 a month for the store. And she's still only charging $60. So when she was doing that at home for her friends, she was making $30 each time. You know, she's chatting it up with her friends while she's doing hair. Seemed like some decent money. So she says, I'm gonna try to make a business out of this. Now she's going to be paying rent in addition to that. So because we like to see our variable on the left, I'm going to rearrange this a little bit and put how much money she's earning on the left. So I know this uses the word charges, but that's her. For her, that number is the money she has coming in. And it's for each hairstyle, so that I'm not going to use S. I can't, because it'll look like my 5s. So I'm going to say 60x. That's her income. For her to be making a profit, that needs to be greater than or equal to her expenses. Well, her expenses, in this case, her expenses are $30 for each hairstyle, so that gets an X, and $500. Now, that's for every month, but we're just saying how many does she need to do in a month, so we don't need to like add an M to that or something. We can't solve if we had too many variables. I think if we set it up that way, it's just going to feel more natural because we can move the X over. So I just flipped it around from the example problem. So then you can subtract your X's and then you're ready to divide. If you're trying to earn profit, you're always going to round up. Okay, so if we're trying to earn profit, we're always going to round up. Okay, in our next one, we have Brittany making $8.50 per hour. So those per numbers, that's typically where our X is going to go. And a $25 bonus. That's not for every hour, unfortunately. That'd be awesome if it was, right? we'd all be signing up for Brittany's job. So 850x plus 25, and we want to know how many hours to make at least $195. So at least means we want to be greater than, we want this stuff to be greater than or equal to the 195. And so that's going to be our setup for that second problem. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to help you get them all set up. Then we'll take some time for you to work them, and I'll walk around and answer questions as you have them. Then the next couple problems are average problems. By the way, this 23 is like the name of the course, Math 23. So sometimes people read that and think they had 23 tests. Dang. So she got we see average. So I know I'm going to have to add things together and then divide. And we're looking for her third test. So our X is the third test. That's what we're looking for. So she got an 85 and an 89, and then I don't know, we don't know yet. And then to find the average, we would add those three scores together and then divide by 3, because with the mystery test, she would have taken 3 tests, and she wants at least a 90 average. So we want this answer to be greater than or equal to 90. So she's really putting some pressure on that third test, right? Because right now she has 2 scores that are lower than 90. So you should expect that your final answer for this one needs to be more than 90, because she's going to have to try to bring the grade up to make a 90 average. And here we go. This is our, we've got more. I've got more than 5 now, though. All right, so this is our small Algebra 1 class. Receiving a pizza party if your class average was 92% or higher on the next exam. So 92% or higher will have a pizza party. Well, here were the first 4 scores that the teacher graded their papers. Person number 1 got an 86. Person number 2, a 91. Person number 3, a 98. Person number 4, an 85. And we've got that 5th score. I haven't graded that test yet. We're trying to figure out what would it have to be so that if I add all those together and divide by 5, that this would be greater than or equal to 92. So both of those 2 average problems, for your first step, I would get rid of the fraction, like times by 5. Really, when you times that by 5, what you're figuring out is how many total points would it take for the 5 tests to make the average of 92. What do we need the total to be? And then that gets rid of the fraction. This gives us the total points. And then I would go ahead and add those other numbers together before I bring it down. Like combine those like terms by adding all those numbers together. And then you'll just have a subtraction to do. And same set of steps with Sarah and her third test. Except you'll be multiplying by 3, of course, since there's only 3 tests total. Okay, we do have an elevator in this building. If you look at the next problem, we do have an elevator in this building. It's way down in the Ivy Tech section, and you have to walk a long way to get to it, so it's not very convenient. But the Excel Center elevator has a maximum capacity of 1,000 pounds before the cable holding it in place snaps. Well, it sounds kind of grim, doesn't it? If 6 people get on the elevator, and this is the first 5 people's weights, we're going to write an inequality to find out how much the 6th person could weigh without snapping the cable. Any ideas on how we're going to set that up? So we're going to add up all these people who already got on, right? I've got someone who weighed 146, 180, 130, 262, 135, about run myself out of space. And if the maximum capacity is 1,000, does that mean we want this stuff to add up to being more than 1,000 or less than 1,000? Less, yes, absolutely. And is it okay if it's exactly 1,000 when it says maximum? Yeah, I might be pushing it, right? I might not be as comfortable if it's exactly 1,000. But if that's the maximum capacity, then yes, we can use the equal sign. Oh, I've left something off there. I did not add my X in there. This. Actually, I'm going to put my X way over here at the left just because I ran myself out of space. So X plus all those numbers needs to stay less than or equal to 1,000. Do I need to do anything else to finish that equation now that I added an X? Do I want to divide by 6? No, I don't want to divide by 6, do I? Because it's not that the average weight of a person is supposed to be 1,000 pounds. So this time we're not talking, it doesn't talk about average, but after the last 2 problems, a lot of times people, if I just leave them to set it up themselves, a lot of times people do because we just did 2 problems like that. But this case, we're not finding the average. We're finding how much weight is left for that last person to weigh and still be under or equal to the 1,000. So this is strictly going to be add all those numbers together, not the 1,000 of course, and then subtract that total on the next step from the 1,000. All right, and then here we have Mr. Tyler has taken his son to the arcade, and they've gave him $20. Gave him $20, and each arcade game costs 75 cents to play, and the boys already used $6.50 of his money to buy snacks. So we want to find out, okay, then how many games can he play with the money that he has left, since he's already spent some of it on snacks. And so we can, we could go ahead and do some subtraction first, right? Because it says what the money he has left. So it might be easiest if we just go ahead and figure out how much does he have left if he's already spent the money on snacks. You could write this all in your equation at the beginning, but if I take away $6.50 from $20, then that means he only has $13.50 left. And then it's 75 cents for each game. And he has to keep that under or equal to $13.50. And the reason we're not just saying equal is because Darius might decide after he plays 5 or 6 games, like, hey, I got this cash. I'm just going to keep this cash. I'm done playing games for the day. My son used to do that when we would go to, like, it was putt-putt golf in an arcade, and he would never spend money on snacks there because there's food at home. Why would you spend your cash on snacks? There's food at home. That was his idea. It's mom's responsibility to feed me. I'm gonna make sure she feeds me. But he would just, like, it wouldn't take him very long, and he would just be walking around, and I'd be like, did you run out of money? And he was like, no, but I'm done. And then he'd just be keeping all the money to save up for something else. And I was like, that's actually pretty smart. So this one would just be divide. And this is going to give us the most games he could play. But it would be okay if, even though it says he could play 18 games or whatever it is, maybe he only stops at 10 games. But he has enough money to play this many games or less. All right, so you have those 6 problems to finish. And then you'll turn in page 45 since it says HW15 at the top. And then as you finish that, what we're going to be doing for the rest of today is we're going to be working through things on this study guide, which is a refresher on all the kinds of things that we have done in the past 2 weeks. And then that means on Monday, I will give you a much more condensed review. Okay? Monday, much more condensed review. We'll go over a few questions to highlight the kinds of things that you need to know. And then you'll have your first assessment on Monday. But we will review more before that and kind of narrow things down of what kind of questions you'll see.